Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Thank you for listening to Your Working Life, my podcast series featuring thought leaders in the career and personal growth arena. Now, I know that you spend a significant portion of your life at work, so I'm on a mission to provide you with tools, inspiration, and resources so you can enjoy your career and love your life. And I'm so delighted to welcome my special guest today. Julia Tang Peters is joining me to talk about her new book, Pivot Points. Julia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, you're so welcome. I've read your book cover to cover. I love it, and I'm eager to dive into a conversation about it. But I do want to tell our listening audience a little bit more about you. So prior to focusing on leadership consulting, Julia, you were a managing consultant at Hewitt Associates, working with Fortune 100 companies. And earlier, you worked as Chief Marketing Officer of Buzz Divine, helping to make the technology services company from startup to IPO in a year. That's extraordinary. And you also served as a managing director at Leo Burnett Company and account director at Frankel and Company. And you have some fantastic degrees in your pedigree. You earned a Master's of Management degree from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, a Master's of Science in Psychology from Northwestern University School of Education and Social Policy, and a certificate in Marriage and Family Therapy from the Family Institute. So I'm thrilled to invite you to talk about your brand new book, Pivot Points, which identifies 5 decisions that can make or break your career. So, Julia, let's dive right in. Now, your new book is called Pivot Points, and you explain that most people experience 5 specific pivot points in their career. So help us understand, what are they and why are they significant?
Okay, and thank you for that great introduction, Carolyn. Pivot points, it was actually a serendipitous discovery. I had to set out to write a different kind of book on leadership because I don't believe in the formulaic, take these 10 steps or follow these 10 rules and you will have fame and success. I think life is a lot more complicated than that, especially for working women. So I started out to write a different kind of book on leadership, starting with taking a closer look at a different kind of leader, the kind of leaders who inspire you to want to reach for leadership positions, leadership roles, and to reach for higher goals. Okay.
Great.
So in my in-depth interviews with several hand-picked great leaders, I realized I didn't have a particular agenda other than to say, these are great leaders we ought to be learning from, rather than so many who are in the news and end up being the fallen, the disgraced, the indicted, you know?
Right.
So serendipitous discovery after all these in-depth interviews was that there was this pattern where each of their trajectories of success and leadership really had 5 pivot points. And those pivot points could be internally generated or by external conditions. Okay, and in many cases, they're negative events, not opportunities, but negative events. And a key theme here, and you ask, what's the importance of pivot points? Here's the importance of pivot points. To embrace those pivot points and to approach them recognizing that I can determine how this story goes from here. And if it is a negative event that's triggered a change, you can say, you know, I don't like the way this is going to go if I don't do something bold. I have to do something bold, and I can change how this story goes and make it go the way I want it to go.
Right.
Okay, we hear a lot about telling your story, your narrative. The point of pivot points is to help you not just tell your story in a certain way, but actually live your story in a way that you can determine its outcomes.
I love it. So you're taking a much more active than a passive role. And Julia, can you walk us through? I know there's so much here, but I would just love to give the audience a glimpse at what those 5 pivot points are.
Sure. Uh, the first one is the launching point, and almost everyone gets to make that. Well, yeah, I would say almost everyone gets to make that launching point pivot decision, and that's a decision to make a commitment to gain mastery of a subject and a skill set. It isn't necessarily your first job or maybe even your second or third job, but it is when you are doing something and you recognize, I love this.
Mm-hmm.
It really resonates for me and it really brings out my best strengths. Okay, and so that being the launching point decision, you are working on building your leadership platform.
Got it.
After you've spent a few years, and it does take a few years to gain mastery at something, uh, you're on a good trajectory. Inevitably, you will face a decision where, okay, I know a lot more than I did, and I know that things could go a lot better. Things can take off if I make this bold direction. Take a certain direction that involves some risk. And that is the turning point decision. It's a decision to improve something. We often hear about turning point decisions as a one eureka moment, and that is the key to your success. Well, I recognize that as one as well, but it is one of 5 eureka moments. Okay.
Got it.
After a while of working on that turning point decision, and your trajectory is on a success course, you will meet another pivot point, and that I call the tipping point decision. That involves a decision to break through a fundamental barrier. And oftentimes, I think especially for women, that fundamental barrier is more internal than external environmental circumstance. And by internal, I mean making the decision to say, if I break through this about me, I can really flourish and
Right.
develop my full potential. You would think that the tipping point decision to break through that barrier you will be at your peak. Well, you do ride a great success curve. However, I found in all the leaders I interviewed that inevitably after 20, 25 years at something, you reach a point of recommitment. For a whole variety of reasons, you reach a pivotal point where you're asking yourself, do I continue doing this or not? And if not, what do I do? Ultimately, it is a decision to recommit to self. Okay, whether I stay at this, where I leave and do something different, it is a recommitment to your own life goal. Okay, the legacy you want to leave. And I found in all of my leaders that their real peak, when they're really hitting their full stride, is after the recommitment decision. They've achieved more at that point than in their dreams. And of course, everyone has to face a letting go decision. And that is not just a decision to leave or retire. It is a strategic decision to pass the torch, to enable others, like what you're doing, Carolyn. You're helping others find their dream, clarify their goals, and be able to reach and accomplish them.
Thank you so much for that fabulous explanation that I believe really will resonate with our listeners. And Julia, as a coach, as an executive coach who helps others navigate through their careers, I really resonate with this because it's not about career planning. It's about making pivotal, to use your term, decisions, right?
Yes.
So how do we know when we're at a pivot point?
That's a great question. And sometimes you won't know.
Okay.
That's the tricky thing here. And it's not like these interviews I had where these leaders told me their stories in the context of pivot points. No, it was that they didn't see that at all. It was my seeing this pattern across all of their careers. And then when I showed them their chapters, with this pivot points framework, they were like, yes, that makes perfect sense. So how do you recognize it? And the thing is, you can't always recognize it, but the importance about understanding these pivot points, and I do encourage everyone to read this book,
Mm-hmm.
is then understanding that you have these, not one eureka moment that you're supposed to watch out for, but you're going to have 5 opportunities, okay, to make a pivotal decision. And here are some points about recognizing when you're at a pivotal decision versus, maybe a difficult decision at the time, but it's not going to be a pivotal one. Pivotal decisions, there's a moment of truth where when you think about the circumstances, your options, if you do it, if you don't do it, what will happen? There's a moment of truth where you recognize, I have to do this, or I need to do this, or else I'm going to regret it, or else I'm going to regret that I never tried.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There is a inner voice that is beyond logical reason. Okay. It's an inner voice of passion to take action. We all get all these ideas in our minds every once in a while, right? And sometimes you think, oh, that's a great idea. I'll have to do that someday. Well, at a pivot point decision, there is this inner voice of, I need to act on this. This isn't just another idea. And you're driven to reach out. And here's the key. We all know, especially with how fast the world is today and how much competition there is out there and all of that, that it takes more than one person. You have to have, in the least, a support network. As you, Carolyn,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
you're helping your clients, as well as a key part of that is helping them build a support network.
Sure.
And that's that this is a point of recognizing a pivot point. You're driven to reach out, to seek other opinions, other points of views about your idea, and to not just go and try to think about this on your own and do it on your own, but to get that network. And another key point of recognizing a pivotal decision is that it's a lot of work, it's a hard decision to make, it involves risk, but you find that you are fueled by it, you are energized by it. Some things are just totally draining. They just sap the energy out of you.
Yes, yes.
Okay, well, if you're doing something that's sapping the energy out of you, that's a sign that that is not a pivotal decision. Okay, that's maybe something you have to do for a while, but it's not a pivotal decision. It's not a pivot point in your career, at least in terms of taking off. The taking off point, it really involves the acting, the doing, the developing the idea actually energizes you.
I love that. I love that. You can't see me because this is just audio, but I'm smiling ear to ear. I agree. It's all about energizing. And thank you so much for talking about creating your team. I like to call it my personal board of directors, people that advise me, and I encourage others to develop their own team. We don't
Yeah,
have to do this alone, and we need to self-actualize to hear our own inner voice. Would you agree?
absolutely. And that's another key part about pivot points ultimately is a developmental journey
Mm-hmm.
that one, whether you believe leaders are born or made, leaders definitely evolve. That is what my research shows. And the evolution really occurs, they're stimulated by these pivotal decisions. They're decisions to grow, they're decisions to learn more, to develop more, to move your goals out a bit further, to stretch yourself more. And and all that involves what do you call it, the board, your
Yeah,
personal.
I like to call it my personal board of directors, right? Who are the team members that I assemble to help me on this journey?
And who are there to help you with your success.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
that's great, Carolyn.
Julia, you profiled 5 remarkable leaders in your book. Why did you pick these individuals?
Well, it involves some risk in that, as I started out saying, there was a certain kind of leader I wanted to feature. Not just someone who's made a lot of money, not just someone who has acquired some fame, not just someone who has a track record of achievements. Those
Mm-hmm.
are all important and they're all wonderful things. But I also wanted leaders who understood that leadership is as much a way of being as what you do.
Very
Uh,
nice.
and so and it's that authenticity because they are leaders. They're not just doing things as business leaders. That they inspire us to reach higher, to achieve goals and results. And most importantly, perhaps in the times we live in, to live our values over the long haul. And that we can do it by being totally authentic. We read a lot, we hear a lot about certain personality traits required for effective leadership, charisma, certain styles. And my findings in my book really is to say, relax, everybody. You don't have certain traits. You don't have to have certain charisma. You don't have to be the world's greatest extrovert. You don't have to be, any particular mold. Be yourself.
Right, right. And that's what's so refreshing about this, right? It's not prescriptive, and it empowers everybody to tap into their own authentic leadership. And another thing that you talk about in the book, you say that leaders continually recreate their jobs and their lives. And again, as a career development expert, this just sings so loud and clearly with me. So tell the audience what you mean by that constant recreation.
You know, um, I think that the biggest myth and misunderstanding in the workplace is that somehow this idea of the job description, that you are your job description, that's what you do, that's how you should think, that's,
Yeah.
the color between those lines, that's what you're here to do. And the people who stand out are the ones who understand, yes, I have certain responsibilities and that's in my job description. What my responsibilities are.
Hmm.
However, they are not confined by the job description. They don't spend every day just busy with the day to day of the job description. They are thinking about solutions. They are thinking about customers. They are thinking about how can we improve this. Yeah, they're thinking about the future. How can we be better at this? What is a bigger purpose, bigger vision that will make us more appealing, help us serve our customers better? You know, and that's what I mean by creating and continually recreating your job. True leaders don't need a job description. They
Excellent.
have personal accountability.
Right.
Carolyn, your sense of accountability to your clients, I'm sure, is all you need. You don't need a job description to tell you what your responsibility to your clients are.
Absolutely. You're right. You're right. Yeah.
Right.
That's so true. That's so true. Excellent. Now, here's another part of this book that I love, Julia. You talk about great leadership equals great decision making. So, you talk about true leaders and how they distinguish themselves by their level of ingenuity and accountability, and also how they execute decision making. So, what are the two factors of leader like decision making?
Okay, this part of my research, I think is really innovative and I think is so key to people's careers as well as more effective organizations. Okay,
Right?
and that is about these decision making strategies that are anchored by one sense of accountability. When what really I mean by holding yourself accountable.
Right,
And
right.
sometimes holding yourself accountable also means holding other people accountable because you supervise them.
Hmm.
And the ingenuity being the ideas and thinking about the future and thinking about improvements. And what I found is that, well, let me also explain, Carolyn, you know this from the book. Um, High accountability, strong ideas, ingenuity, those are the leaders. Their decisions are based on those two factors. high accountability, but really within the realm of the status quo, conventional thinking, those are the managers. Important role, we need managers. The importance here is to recognize that the job of managing is different from the work of leading.
Yes, yes.
Right? Yeah. And low accountability and in the realm of status quo, I call clock punchers. Basically, clock punchers are very risk averse. They don't want to put themselves out there in any way. They do just enough to keep their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And wanderers are those who have ideas and can have great ideas, but they don't hold themselves accountable for making those ideas happen. Okay, so those are the 4 decision-making types. Now, what I found, and the research was based on a questionnaire of a battery of questions based on behaviors that are accountability-based and behaviors that are ingenuity, idea-based. And respondents were asked to agree, disagree on a scale, 5-point scale with these battery of statements. And what we found distinguishes the leaders from everyone else. Again, it's not about personality traits or authoritativeness or executive presence, all those things that we usually hear about. It's really about reaching out to people. Okay. The leaders, the people who make pivotal decisions using these leadership strategies also have more successful outcomes, first of all, okay? Mm-hmm. But they strongly disagree with statements like these, and the other decision-making types did not strongly agree with these statements. And these statements are, I consult with a variety of knowledgeable people to explore options. Okay, I'm reaching out, exploring options, talking and tapping other people's expertise and skill sets and advice. I work to build consensus and enthusiasm for decisions among the key stakeholders. Okay, I know that it's not just me making the decision and that it's just me executing it. I know that I'm going to need to bring people along. So I'm working to build consensus enthusiasm so I can bring people along. And another statement they strongly agree with is I work hard to get everyone affected by the decision to understand my thinking in making this decision. Mm-hmm. You don't have to agree with me, but I want you to understand how I made the decision, why I made the decision. And then I do expect you to understand that and so to not be a resistor.
Excellent.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Excellent clarity on that. That's so helpful. So, Julia, there are so many emerging leaders out there, right? We've got this massive millennial population of 30, 35-ish and below. And in a few years, they're going to be 50% of our workforce. So they are the leaders of tomorrow. What kind of advice do you have for the folks who are not yet leading, but are moving into those roles as they think about their pivot points and their decision-making style? What do our newbie leaders need to think about?
Well, I would advise them, certainly self-serving, but to help them, I would really advise them to buy Pivot Points and read it, and to understand that it is a journey and it is a developmental journey. I think that the young people today, especially, the college grads today, I mean, the most recent graduating class, we're getting into this generation of young people who have always known computers, always known the iPad, iPod, the digital games. They were raised on digital.
Yeah.
And they're accustomed to, getting what they want, when they want it, where they want it. And I have many clients actually saying, will you talk to my college graduate? They don't have a clue what they want to do.
Right.
I have found that young people today there seems to be a bifurcation. There are those who don't have a clue what they want to do because There are too many choices. I think we live in a world where there are too many choices. And, these kids grew up with, the constant choice of what I want, when I want it, where I want it. And then there's also the young people who are incredibly focused, who are incredibly generous. They want to serve a purpose, and they really want to contribute as a productive citizen, certainly, but also to help others in their work. So I find that, there isn't a whole lot in between. It seems to be pretty bifurcated between these two. And my advice to them, I mean, both camps really, is to understand that five pivotal decisions really gives a framework, a structure for how to think about how you're going to do it, how you're going to make it, but more importantly, what you're going to make it in. To discern, and here's the main point about pivot points, pivotal decisions, and the tools I include in the book about
Mm-hmm.
questions you should ask yourself all along the way. The main point is to help you discern from all the noise what really matters to you, not what matters to somebody else, your spouse, your parents, or your friends, but what really matters to you, and to really discern from all the noise. And we live with a lot of noise,
We do.
right? What really matters, and be able to discern your inner voice from the others, but also to discern which other voices really matter. That there are lots of noisy voices. You would serve yourself better if you just kind of shut them out. However, there are important voices you need to pay attention to. Like Carolyn, for you are an important voice to your clients.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an important voice to my clients. But you know what I mean.
I do. I do. And it's such important advice for these young emerging leaders to hear now. And what I love about your book is it really is it's a gift, it's a resource, it's a guidebook to say, okay, how do I become a great leader? Because we need to grow great leaders, right? People just don't roll out of bed becoming great leaders. And this is tactical, it's implementable. And that's what I love about your resource, Julia. What a joy to have you on. Tell us how we can buy Pivot Points.
Okay, Pivot Points, thankfully, is available at all major booksellers, including Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, 800CEORead.com, BooksAMillion.com, as well as Barnes and Noble retail stores and all major booksellers. I was fortunate. Publishers Weekly, when my book was released a month ago, Publishers Weekly gave it an excellent review. And as you know, Publishers Weekly is the industry-facing publication, so most major booksellers do carry it.
Excellent, excellent. And tell us how we can follow you online. If you'd give us your website address, that would be fantastic, Julia, so we can send some traffic your way.
Thank you, Carolyn. JuliaTangPeters.com. That's JuliaTangPeters.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you, my dear. You be well and take good care. And I want to thank you for tuning into Your Working Life, where my goal is to help you design your career and life destiny so it doesn't happen by default. True career and life satisfaction is really possible, and it's time to embrace what you love doing so you can do more of it. I'm Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Take good care.